And I just turned around and I hauled ass out of there. I was done. I wasn't dealing with that.
The hypocrisy of the cult is one of the things that turned me away the quickest.
When I turned my headlights on, it turned and looked at us. And one of the things I remember the most were the eyes were glowing red.
I see an orb of light. It is just circling these steps like it is waiting for me.
And he begins to tell them that he saw a UFO. They're basically like, what are you talking about? That's 7 foot up on a tree, peeking around it. And that's where I saw the top of the muzzle, nose, and the eyes. As soon as I made eye contact with this thing, it felt like death.
Welcome back to Tinfoil Tales. I'm your host, Brandon. Tonight we're joined by my guest, Wild Trees. Would you like to let the audience know a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, definitely. So I have my own YouTube channel. So if you just type in biologist Wild Trees, and I'm a scientist who studies biology, which is the study of life, living things, like all the way a little cell. You're made of trillions of cells. Did you know that, Brandon? There's trillions of living things inside you right now.
I don't like thinking about stuff like that, so please do not tell me.
No, but it's a good thing. I argue that this means that loneliness never exists because you yourself are made of trillions of living things and they all care about you and their only job is to keep you alive. How can you ever be alone if you actually have trillions of lives caring about you, with you?
Yeah. I get creeped out thinking about all the little organisms that are living in my eye sockets or in my eyelashes and everything else that like feed on the moistures and everything. I was like, ugh. All the little things inside my stomach eating on the foods and breaking things apart. And yeah, I just try not to think about stuff like that.
Hey, I hear you loud and clear. Everything you said is correct. It does happen. And I understand your feelings. Microbiology is not for everybody. I'm a microbiologist. That's the main thing I do is study things that need a microscope. So insects, water bears, tardigrades are another organism I study. But what I love microscopes because to me it's like the closest to going like in a time machine. There's this one microscope that's called a scanning electron microscope. Okay, so you put your sample in. It sounds like a spaceship. It's just like a chamber. You put your sample in, and it starts revving up, and you get these images, right? And it's like traveling somewhere else. So to give you an idea of the magnification, okay, take a grain of pollen. All right, so a grain of pollen is microscopic, right? It's like they float in the air. They give you allergies, right? It's basically that's how plants reproduce. It's basically plant sperm to put it in a in just a common way. Okay. Anyway, it's very tiny. When you put it in a microscope, it magnifies it to the point that it looks like an island. It looks like an island you could walk on. That's how big it makes things. And to me, that's like traveling to a whole other dimension. In the paranormal world, we talk about this dimension, interdimensional. Well, the microscopic realm is another dimension to me. It's a dimension of size. And there's so many weird things there. But basically, I also like the paranormal. I think a lot of it's real. Speaking of microscopes, I think one of the reasons why we haven't advanced in paranormal subjects is because we lack the tools to view the paranormal. Our eyes are not made, our ears are not made to view the paranormal. That's probably an evolutionary thing. These things that are paranormal, ghosts, Bigfoot, aliens, time travelers, whatever is out there, they probably evolved to stay away from our senses. And so I think what we're lacking is a tool to let us see the paranormal. As an example, the microscope. Before the microscope was invented, people thought the idea of, microbes or bacteria was crazy. Nobody could imagine. It was their paranormal, It's because they didn't have the tool to look at it. And I do think some people have the tools already. So I think military, some science organizations, they probably have the tools to view these things. It's nothing fancy, just like super cool cameras, like the FLIR cameras that Navy jets use, but they're so expensive. You and me, we're not going to be able to afford one of those in our backyard. You know what I mean?
Not the actual ones the Navy use, but I do have a thermal that I can pick up heat signatures, but again, it's not going to pick up every little thing.
Right, exactly. There's different levels to the technology. But yeah, so because I believe in the paranormal, but I also work on actual research and I publish and I work at universities and I give talks at institutes and libraries and schools. And because of all that reason, I use a name that is not my real name. So I use the name Wild Trees. The name just came to me one day. It just came to me like a download. Let's call it that. But I like it. I think it's a cool name. And the reason why I have to use that name is like I remember when I was an undergrad and my mentor, he was teaching me the ropes, a great scientist. And I remember whenever the subject of paranormal came up, he just had such disgust on his face. And a lot of people in academia have disgust in their face. And we could talk about why that is. But he would be disappointed in me. So if he saw my real name and he saw, this guy, Bigfoot, he heard the things I thought about the paranormal, he would just be disappointed in me. Probably some people that would otherwise want to work with me would be disappointed in me. And so I don't use my real name. And there's a history of this. Like there's this thing called the Invisible College. Jack Valet was in it. And, his mentor, Hynek, was in it. It's just a loose term. Invisible College means a bunch of scientists that work in secret on the paranormal for the reasons I mentioned, because it's not publicly accepted.
You said we could get into that, and I was actually going to bring that up here in a little bit, but before we kind of do, was the paranormal something that you were interested in prior to becoming a scientist? Is this something like that you had experience with, or is it just something you were interested in?
I got interested in the paranormal when I was very little, and maybe you had a similar interaction, and other Americans had a similar interaction. So in every public library I went to, school library, public library, there was always a little section on the paranormal, like 5 books about the Bermuda Triangle, Bigfoot,
Mm-hmm.
and God bless librarians for doing that, because they didn't have to do that. They decided, hey, let's put this in here. And I was fascinated by those books because I was like, what is going on here? Like, I'm not learning any of this at school. It's not in the fiction section, it was this gray area. And as a young kid, I was like, it was just fascinating, it was like, what's going on? Like, this is real. It's so fantastical. So that's how I got interested in it. But I didn't really do anything with that love. And then I had paranormal experiences. I have had some. And then, okay, so what really got me interested in paranormal the way I am now, that happened in like 2016. I was in graduate school getting my master's degree, and I was really sick, and I saw Stephen Greer's documentary on Netflix called Unacknowledged. And with that show, I realized, holy moly, like there's a lot of evidence for the paranormal, especially UFOs. It's scientists severely underestimate the amount of evidence there is, and so that really changed me. So that movie changed me, and that's what turned me on to the subject. And at that point, I was in the middle of a graduate school, so I had all this scientific training, and I was in a scientific mindset. So that also fueled it scientifically. So I've been really at it since about 2016, I guess.
Okay.
To answer your question, yeah.
Now, why do you think, just from obviously being in the field and everything, why do you think a lot of mainstream science frowns upon these sort of topics?
Yeah, pretty simple explanation. So this is how it started. This is what is actually happening right now. Okay, so we can talk about how it started, but this is why things are the way they are now. Okay, so why doesn't a scientist take the paranormal seriously? You would think like science is a tool. That's how I describe it. It's like a hammer. A hammer's used to build a house. Science is a tool. The way it works is you answer questions. You ask science a question and you get an answer. So I could be like, hey, how do I grow bigger carrots? You do a little bit of science, you get your answer. Say, hey, are aliens real? You could apply science to that and you will get an answer. You have to be skilled. It's not the easiest question to use science with. It's kind of like, being a wizard. Science is like being a wizard, really. It's like magic spells and rituals. It's just the scientific process. But there are bigger questions. Okay, so science should be able to answer these paranormal questions, but doesn't it? And here's why. Okay.
Your audio is cut out.
There's right now. There's 4 different ways it's made. Okay.
Your audio's cutting out. I can't hear what you're saying.
All right. Let me see. Oh, wait. Hold on. Okay. Let me get closer to somewhere. What about now?
I can hear you now.
Oh, okay. I know why. It's because I had the Wi-Fi on, and I just walked away too far. Uh, but I also have cell. Okay, I just won't walk too far. What's the last thing I said? Do you remember?
You said there was three things and then it cut out.
Oh, okay. Um, okay. So there's a few ways that scientific projects get done, and we make new discoveries. Okay. So one is through the government. So the government has their own labs and scientists. One of them is through businesses. So businesses have independent labs and scientists. Another one is private sector. So you could just have a lab in your backyard. Nobody's stopping you. And then the last one is academic. So that's universities and institutes. Okay. So
Mhm.
the interesting thing is that none of those, none of those ways, except for one, they have no obligation to make the research findings public. Okay. So if a government discovers something like paranormal, they don't have to make it public. They actually benefit from keeping it a secret. If a private company does some paranormal research and they discover something cool, they don't have to make it public either. Once again, they benefit from keeping it secret. If a guy in his lab or a woman in their lab, they make a discovery, nobody even knows they did it, so they just keep it secret. So the only institute that needs to make it public are the academics, which are scientists. Okay. Okay, but here's the thing: it costs a lot of money to do a research project. It's kind of like making a movie, right? So you have to have a timeline, a schedule, a budget. Some of these projects could take 2 years, 10 years, $10 million, $5 million. Okay, so it takes money. Okay, so okay, once again, the only people that have to make their research public are the academics. So if we're going to find out about the paranormal, it's going to be through the academics because they have to make the research publish. They have to make the research public because that's their whole career depends on them publishing research. There's a term called publish or perish. Publish, what that means is you're publishing research studies, you're publishing new discoveries. So the academics have to do that, okay? But once again, it costs a lot of money to do research. Okay. So where does the money come from? All right, so this is the answer. The answer is money. Why don't scientists take the paranormal seriously? It all comes down to money. So only the academics are the ones that are going to make it public, and they're the only ones that are going to take it seriously. They get their money from what's called grants. A lot of the grants come from the National Science Foundation. Okay, so that's a tax-funded organization that you and I pay for. Okay, so you apply for these grants, and they give you money, and then you do a project. But here's the thing: the grants, the people that offer the grants, they decide what the topic is that you're going to study. Okay, so they decide, hey, I'm offering money for a study on salmon. How can we make bigger salmon that are more disease resistant? They're the ones that say, hey, let's do a study on childhood obesity. Oh, what's up with all these kids being so fat? And so basically, if the government doesn't, or if nobody, not just the government, but the government's the main person, if the government doesn't put out any money for any paranormal research to do, then nobody's going to do paranormal research because there's no money in it as well. And there's also a lot of risk of ridicule. So that's basically it. That's why we're at the place we are now. So if there was some way to independently get money, and you had a scientist who didn't mind taking a risk, which we have seen this happen. Gary Nolan is doing this. Gary Nolan is a scientist who's doing this. You see, Robert Bigelow funded a lot of projects. He put millions of dollars to scientific projects. But
Mhm.
you can see how rare that is for someone out there. You need like a rich philanthropist who's willing to do paranormal research and fund it. And that's exactly what Robert Bigelow is. But he's like one in a million.
See, he
So
had Skinwalker
yeah,
Ranch at one point, and
yeah,
now
yeah,
it's
yeah.
been bought out by somebody else.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I've done a deep dive into his time in Skinwalker Ranch. So he bought Skinwalker Ranch specifically to do research on the paranormal and to make advancements. He started a nonprofit organization called NIDS, the National Institute for Discovery Science. And so that was his lab, and he funded it with some of the. I gotta hand it to him. He found some of the greatest scientists in the field to fund it. And here's the other thing: he did make discoveries. But remember what I told you? Like nobody has to make it public except for the academics.
Mhm.
So he's a private individual. So I'm sure he's released a little bit of information. I could tell you about it. I can read about it. But the vast majority of his research. So he funded papers. So in somewhere in his collection, he's got these papers, these books, basically that document amazing scientific discoveries. Now he hasn't released it because he has no obligation to. He paid for it. Like he literally owns it. It's like you buy a beautiful car, right? Like you could decide to let other people drive it. So you could be like, yeah, you could drive my Ferrari or my Mustang, you know, but you don't have to. It's yours. You paid for it. You know, you worked hard for that Mustang. That's the way he is with his research. There's no obligation for him to release it. But yeah, based on his interviews that he's done, he's found some incredible things. One of the most interesting things he found is like he did an experiment where he was like directly interacting with the paranormal, like whatever the entity was. So what he would do basically, his researchers would be at Skinwalker Ranch. They would be in a room like a trailer house, and on the table they would get some like like a ball, like a rubber ball, and some of those metal jacks. You know how you used to play jacks as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he said he would like leave him disorganized, then he would have to leave. The researcher would leave the room just for like a little bit, and they would, I guess, talk to the entity or something, and they would come back, and the jacks would be arranged in all these, interesting configurations, And so he was convinced just by the circumstance of how it happened that it was direct. Those jacks were directly being moved around by the entity, and to me, that's pretty fascinating. He also said that his research, he kind of gave up on it because he saw that the paranormal thing that was in Skinwalker Ranch, it was just playing games with him. That's what he saw. He's like, this is cool. He was like, I'm interacting with it. It's even coming home with me. We're all having the hitchhiker effect. We're having a lot of interactions with it, but all it wants to do is play games. And he found it hard to make any progress with the topic.
What did he think that ended up being? Is it just like a spirit or something from a different plane of existence?
That's off the top of my head, I don't know if he's ever put a fine point on it. He tells a lot of stories,
Mm-hmm.
but that direct question, I think. Look, I just have to guess based on what he said. Put things together. I think he believes whatever's there is intelligent, for sure. But I guess that's kind of obvious. I guess what we really want to know is like, what's the source? Everybody in the paranormal community they want to just shake the paranormal by the collar and be like, just explain yourself.
Right.
What are you like? Where do you come from? So if I had to guess, he probably thinks it's something interdimensional. Which, like, what does that even mean? I give an example of interdimensional. Which is like us observing something extremely microscopic. That's a different dimension. That's like a size dimension. So quite literally, people say interdimensional. It could be. I'm not saying this is what's happening, but it could be that something huge is messing with us. Maybe the very tip of their finger is the size of a mountain. That would be interdimensional communication. It'd be like the way we interact with a fly.
Yeah.
That's just one example. But to put an answer, I don't know. I want to find out now if he's actually said what he thinks it is.
A lot of people have their own opinions on things, but again, I don't think there's any conclusive evidence to lean what the paranormal is. Otherwise, we wouldn't be having this conversation. And I know, and I brought this up recently to somebody else that like it wasn't related to the show or anything, but we were talking about spirits, and they think a lot of ghosts, quote unquote ghosts, are people trapped that didn't cross over. And I'm wondering, like, if someone died and they have the ability to cross over, why would they want to stick around here? And they're like, well, maybe they got things that they didn't finish or unfinished. I was like, yeah, but if you're promised a better afterlife, wouldn't you want to go to that afterlife unless you're not going to the good place and then there's something else and they're hanging around here because they don't want to go to the bad place? It just, I don't know. I get hung up on that our energy is like trapped here.
I thought about the same thing. So here's my views on the afterlife. Yeah, I don't have any strong evidence to support this. This is just what I believe based on my experiences and things I've read and saw. Okay, I do think there's an afterlife. Okay, I think that when you die, here's the scariest thing about dying. I think it's probably going to be shockingly similar to what it's like to be alive. A lot of the mundane things you deal with, is probably still going to happen when you're dead. It's probably not going to be any pain. That's good. No pain. Probably still be mental suffering, possibly. But anyway, when you die, I think you're probably greeted right. Okay, first of all, you want to die happy. Okay, do not die panicked if you can. I know that's a tough ask, but I'm going to try. My attitude when I die is like, look, as soon as I die, it's coming. I'm going to go. It's like taking a vacation to somewhere I've never been before. There's no fear. There's not going to be any pain. I'm going to die, and I'm just going to visit a new place, the afterlife. and it's very natural. It's one of the most natural things that could happen. It's not unnatural. Everything dies. So you want to be calm. It helps if you're sleeping when you die, But yeah, try to be calm. So if you're calm and you die, I think you're probably greeted by other people that you knew that died, that loved you. Okay, they're probably observing you, and they're there to kind of comfort you and help you through this transitory period of death. And unfortunately, some people probably don't have anybody like that, so it probably is a little bit rough for them. Um, Here's a question to address what you said. Why would those people hang around? So the people that are gonna greet you are gonna be people that loved you that died. I don't think they're in purgatory. I think they're there by choice. I think they're enjoying their time. Here's what I think happens. I think when you die, if you had loved ones you care about on Earth, you're probably going to want to stick around, just to keep an eye on them and hang out with them. Just look at them because you love them. Probably you'll do a lot of traveling too. Maybe you'll go to another planet or you'll go to the top of Mount Everest, although it's not that impressive. I went there in a video game called Microsoft Flight Simulator 2026 or 25 or 20. Anyway, so so yeah, I think, and then eventually what happens? Here's what eventually happens. Eventually, when you die, everybody you know will also die. So they'll all be there with you, right? Like eventually, you're going to run out of people that you knew that are alive. Sure, you're going to have great grandkids, but you never really met them. So eventually, so I think a few years go by. Let's say you die, and everything's peaceful. I think like 60 years go by, however long it takes for everybody that you knew when you were alive to also die. At that point, you have less holding you back on Earth, and then you may decide to go on to whatever's next voluntarily. You may decide then to go on to, you know, something else. Something else happens. Perhaps reincarnation. Perhaps that's just an option. But yeah, so that's what I think. That's why I think people would stick around. I don't think I think it would be by choice, but it wouldn't be like a bad choice. It would be just like, hey, it's like you don't want to move too far away from somebody you love. Maybe you're like, oh well, I love that person. I'm going to move like 5 hours away from them. I don't want to move like to another country. Although people do that all the time. And I also think that it's your decision. I think you could probably just move on if you want to. But some people I think will choose to stay around because they still have loved ones.
What about the ones that they claim they have these bad entities that are in their homes or they're causing issues and they're terrifying people? That's where I get hung up on it. I was like, well, that seems like a very dark type of a energy that would be causing some sort of issues in someone's home.
Yeah, okay, so I was like, a broad statement about what we're talking about. I think the paranormal has so many different explanations. I think it's just one thing. It's like even like Bigfoot probably has 5 different explanations or more. One of it could be just like wild men, just like really hairy guys that have been living in the woods for generations, and women. I'm not trying to be sexist over here. Men and women that have been living in the forest for generations, and that's what some Bigfoot are. I think some of them are interdimensional. Some are probably extraterrestrial. Some of them are just basically an ape that lived around. So I think that applies to all the paranormal. Okay, so I'm just going to give you one possible explanation of what these negative entities could be. Just one explanation. So I remember I said that I think one of the most shocking things will probably be how similar the afterlife is to the living life.
Mm-hmm.
So just like that, I think some people are just horrible, and I don't think that changes when you die. You know what I mean? Think of some of the worst monsters in history. I don't, and I mean like monstrous. Like they get joy from inflicting suffering. Those people are alive and they die, and I don't think a switch gets flipped. I don't think a switch gets flipped necessarily, and they become even a little bit better. So they may get a kick out of just terrorizing people. That could be a simple explanation for some of them.
I was going to say something like, I think that's pretty spot on to a degree because, again, there are terrible people. So it makes sense for them to be terrible in the afterlife too. But I don't know. I guess if they want to just stick around to terrorize people, then I guess that's their prerogative. It just seems kind of strange.
I mean, I think it's look, it's possibly strange because we're not like that at all. You and I are not like that at all. And all our listeners are not like that. But I mean, imagine this guy who's. This time I will say it's a guy. It's not a girl. There's a man, and he loves torturing living things. Right? And I'm sure this man exists somewhere right now. So it's not like a too far-fetched idea. If you tell him like, "Hey, man, now you're a ghost, and you can still terrorize people, but you don't have any pain. There's no jail. You can like terrorize anybody, anywhere." I assume those are some of the powers a ghost has. Just being a disincarnate, intelligence without a body. I think a lot of those cycles would like that idea. I think that would excite them. They'd be like, "Oh my gosh, this is like Disneyland." And I mean, that's the way. Like I said, that's the way it is right now. We have free will to a large extent. So some people decide to use that free will to terrorize people, to terrorize animals. To create atrocities for their own enjoyment. So that's what I think. But I have no idea, man. I'm just, these are things that are really far out.
Right.
Yeah, we'll all find out one day, though. We will know the answer, but hopefully not anytime soon.
You mentioned Bigfoot, and is that something else that you kind of get into, like when the things that
Yeah.
you look into is like Bigfoot and other weird cryptid stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I would say on my channel, Biologist Wild Trees on YouTube, Bigfoot is a huge component of what I do, mainly because it's an animal or animal-like, and I'm a biologist. I also talk about aliens and abductions. So those are the main ones that I talk about, I think. But yeah, Bigfoot, I'm super into Bigfoot. I made one video that's basically called How to Collect a Bigfoot Body. So I proposed a method to get the holy grail of Bigfootery, which is the body, so we can finally prove it's real. So I came up with a way to do that. And it's highly speculative, but I think it's a hell of a lot better than what we have right now, which is basically, let's just shoot one. Let's shoot this thing that's adapted for the forest, and it can climb as fast as a rocket ship, and let's kill one. It hasn't been done, I don't think. It hasn't done very often, so I just don't think that's a good plan for getting a body. I think we should get a body back. I don't think it's going to happen that way.
What do you think that we should be able to do? Like, how do you think they could catch one?
To put it very simply, a little background. So there's some intelligent animals like crows and ravens where if you become friends with them by giving them gifts like food, they will give you gifts back, and you could kind of train them to give you certain kind of things, right? This has been shown. It's very, obvious. Bigfoot has been shown to also accept gifts as well, just like peanut butter jars. It's a super common thing in the Bigfoot community. People that live near it give it gifts. There's all kinds of people say don't do it because then you're stuck with a problem. Anyway, I interviewed a guy named Randy who lives in Minnesota, and he does a lot of gifting with Bigfoot. So we accept gifts. So basically, my idea would be that you form a years-long relationship with Bigfoot. And I know an area with Bigfoot here in Texas called the Big Thicket National Preserve. Lots of recent Bigfoot sightings, so there probably is Bigfoot there. So I would just leave the gifts in the streams where they're at. They're often seen in streams because when you have nature, a big forest, they use animals and wildlife like Bigfoot. They use streams and creeks as corridors or highways to travel. So they're often seen there, because there's less trees and yeah, it's just a great. I use it all the time too. If I'm doing a biology project in the woods and I need to get from there to here, I'll try to take a stream to get there because you don't have to deal with the trees. So I would find one of those spots. I would start, or I would just go to someone who already has a gifting area, start leaving gifts, building the relationship, give them bigger gifts. They like tobacco, they like all kinds of stuff. But I'm talking like big gifts. Like I'm spending money on these guys, right? Liquor, maybe cigars, tobacco. Anyway, eventually, here's the thing. I want them to give me the ultimate gift, which I would want them to trade me some kind of body, maybe like a Bigfoot hand. And here's the other thing, okay? How are they going to get the body? Well, I want them to get a body that has naturally died in an accident or of old age, So I would have to work up to that. So basically, to put a fine bow on it, my idea for how to get a body from Bigfoot is to ask Bigfoot for a body, which I don't think anybody's ever proposed. And it's not just asking, but asking by trading for it. Something big. I'm talking about 2 tons of pancakes, maple syrup, the good stuff. A lot of stuff for a body.
I don't know if this has been something that's been done. I assume it has been, but you know how a lot of people go out and ask, like paranormal investigators will go to a haunted house and they ask questions and they bring out these boxes for communication and anything.
Yeah.
Has someone tried to do that in a Bigfoot area to see if they have any way of manipulating some of these spirit boxes or these little meters or something? Because I know people claim that these things can talk to them with mind speak or stuff like that. Have they ever tried to actually use a device that can pick up stuff?
I'm sure somebody must have done it, but I haven't seen any evidence of it. Something pretty interesting happened, somewhat similar. It's on my YouTube channel. So I did one interview with Randy, the guy from Minnesota that's got Bigfoot living around him, right? And I asked him, I was like, "Hey, Randy, I mean, we're having the interview live right now. The Bigfoot are here. They've been in your house. One time, something went in his house and peed all over the bed, and it was really weird smelling pee. And some other stuff happened in his kitchen. So he thinks it was Bigfoot. It probably was, or something similar. So anyway, I knew Bigfoot was there. So I was like, Randy, can you ask Bigfoot to give us a sign if they're here, if they're listening? Kind of like that. So he did it. He was like, okay, Bigfoot. He talked to them because he talks to them often. He goes, and so he asked them, I guess, just to give a sign, right? And then I don't know, a few seconds went by, maybe a minute, not that long, and his feed completely cut off. We lost connection, and then we went back, and I got him back on the line on the video feed, and then we talked about it. We're like, we made a face. We're like, was that a sign? Like, are they trying to show us that they're here? So I'm definitely down with that idea. One idea I have with Bigfoot is I want to make a book called Cooking for Bigfoot, or a cookbook for Bigfoot. So I want to go out to Minnesota with Randy, where he normally gives Bigfoot gifts. And so the idea of the book is just writing about my experiences interacting with Bigfoot. I'm not trying to get a photo or scare them or anything. But what I would do is I would go out to his little gifting area with like a little table and like a little stove and all my ingredients, and I would start cooking up some banana Fosters, some peanut butter brittle or peanut butter cookies or a steak. And like every day, every night, I would just make a new dish for Bigfoot. Right, and I would just talk to him. If they're watching through the shadows, make the meal, explain it to them, write down the recipe for the cookbook, and then I would just leave it there and just go, f off. I would f off for the night and come back and see what happened. Like, did Bigfoot like it? And so I'm not trying to pressure Bigfoot either. I'm not like, hey man, I'm trying to prove you're real, man. No, like literally, dude, I just want to cook for you, and I just want to see what you like. And if it's okay with you, I'll just write the recipes down, and I'll just write down what happened. And so I think that'd be a great experience, maybe a little documentary or a book. But that's kind of like along the lines of what you're saying. This is basically just trying to start a direct communication with Bigfoot, whether it's with a electronic tool or with leaving it, food of different types.
I think a lot of people I've heard the stories. I don't know Randy personally, but I've heard someone else that has talked to him and they've told me some of the things that he's explained. And when it comes to the Bigfoots in the house, I've talked to someone that says they've had Bigfoots in their house and everything. And I'm kind of a skeptic on some things. And I'm like, well, if these things are in your house, but you're not seeing them, I can't explain it. It's almost got that whole supernatural element to it again. So I often wonder, I was like, are they really what we think are Bigfoots, or is it something else just letting people think that they're a Bigfoot, but it's actually something else?
Right, right. Yeah, I've thought about this too scientifically. Another one of my topics. Okay, so I thought about this dealing with poltergeist. Oh, poltergeist is another huge interest of mine. Super fascinated by poltergeist. I think once again, poltergeist. I think there's a bunch of different causes to poltergeist, not just one cause. And if you read the encyclopedias, I actually have an encyclopedia about the paranormal written by a bunch of academics. But if you read the literature, because poltergeist stories go back so far, they believe at the time that it had different causes. It wasn't just one cause of a poltergeist. So I think one cause of it is a paranormal animal, an entity. Okay, so I'm going to talk about what it does, which I think Bigfoot might also do. Okay, to explain why people can't see it. All right. So these are just animals. I think some poltergeists are just animals, and I think Bigfoot are just animals in some cases. However, they could do these random things where they throw things and you can't see them, in your house, or things seem to move at a weird rate, or it starts raining inside, or in Randy's case, somebody pees on the bed, but you don't really see it. So how could that happen? Okay, so I think it could be an adaptation, a radical adaptation. An adaptation, biologically speaking, it's something that your body has that allows you to survive better. Okay, so we have adaptations, right? We have, hearing, that allows us to survive better, but we're a little bit boring. Let's talk about an eagle. An eagle has an adaptation of super telescopic vision, right? So they can see super far away, right? Let's talk about some more radical adaptations that we know about. Let's talk about the fish called the electric eel. Okay, the electric eel can use its body made of just cells like I talked about, and it could create such a high electrical charge that it could kill a person. You know what I mean? And that's what it does. It kills fish and it eats them. That's pretty radical. Think about a human being able to do that. It's a radical adaptation. So I think some paranormal entities have another radical adaptation. It's called time dilation. So time dilation is a real physics phenomenon. And so let me just explain how it's done, how I think they do it, and what it means when they do it. Okay. Just like the electric eel, time dilation, if you have a lot of energy, you're able to produce a large energy out discharge. You know, you're able to basically move at a slower time than everybody else. Okay, so what does that mean? That means that it'll look like if you're experiencing time dilation. Let's say you're a Bigfoot, you have this biological adaptation in your body that lets you uh, release all this energy at once, and then that causes time dilation. So now you're in time dilation mode. What happens is that everything around you looks like it's moving super slow motion. So if somebody was shooting a gun at you and you turned on time dilation mode, the bullets would be coming out of you like a slot, like a slideshow, like super slow motion.
Mm-hmm.
Now you would be able to move at a regular speed, so you'll be able to dodge it. You'll be able to throw things. So from your perspective, everything's almost at a standstill. It's because of time dilation, which is a real physical phenomenon. But to everybody else, you'd be moving so fast they wouldn't even seen you. Another really there's two movies that really show this really well is the X-Men franchise with Quicksilver.
Yep.
There's a few movies that brilliantly show what that would look like. And also some more recent movies called Sonic the Hedgehog. He does it as well. I guess The Flash does it as well in his movie. But yeah, so I think some animals, I think that's an adaptation they have, like poltergeist and Bigfoot. So it sounds radical, but like I said, I think there are radical adaptations. I think some of these paranormal entities are really outside our understanding of normal things. And so we have to think about these crazy things, If we only think about things like incrementally, like we only think a little bit outside of our understanding, we're only going to make small discoveries, If we expand our imagination, then we'll make bigger discoveries. And so anyway, that's one possible explanation to how that might happen.
I interviewed someone a couple years ago now, and he wrote a book basically explaining that Bigfoot is like the forest poltergeist, because if you have Bigfoot activity out in the woods, if you bring all that stuff into your house, people would say their house is haunted with a poltergeist, but since it's out in the woods, they claim it's Bigfoot.
Right.
And
Right.
it's true. Like the things that people hear the knocks, they hear things being thrown at them, this and that, but you also have that happen in your homes. And then like Randy, where he claims he's had Bigfoot in his homes, to me, it almost sounds like poltergeist activity, but
Right.
he's saying it's Bigfoot communicating with him.
Well, okay. Once again, we're throwing away so many things. So once again, everything I say, I'm not saying this. It's not saying it's true.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
But another thing I thought about in a situation like Randy, or in a situation where you have a lot of different types of paranormal activity at once that seem very different, it could be that it is different. And this is what I thought about. I thought maybe when you have one paranormal entity, it attracts other paranormal entities around it. And here's an example. Okay. So there's this fish, which you may be familiar with, called the remora. Are you familiar with the remora?
I've heard of the name, but I don't know what it is.
So the remora fish, I'm not sure if all of them hang out with sharks, but there's definitely a big group of them that hang out with sharks. Okay.
That's the thing
So
that swims under them, like eats the parasites.
yeah,
Yeah.
and its face is like designed just to stick to a shark. It's crazy, right? Uh, so I think there's probably remoras in the paranormal as well. So what I'm trying to say is that let's say Randy, he's got his Bigfoot there. That Bigfoot's got some little remoras, other entities that are kind of attached to him that come from his world, the paranormal world, and that could be the secondary things you're seeing. So it could very well be something different that's in his house. Maybe like a poltergeist or some kind of weird other animal that's connected to Bigfoot but isn't Bigfoot. Another explanation possible.
I've talked to someone that claims that they've had Bigfoot around their house, and they've sent me photos before. And a lot of the stuff that I see in the photos, I can't necessarily see a Bigfoot, but I see something. And then there's sometimes that they claim Bigfoot appears as a mist.
Right.
Again, that sounds very supernatural to me. Like it's got that paranormal vibe to it because people see these shapes or these shadows or these mists and people call them ghosts. But
Right.
some people now are saying these are Bigfoot. I was like, again, I wonder if the things that we're interpreting as Bigfoot or spirits or everything, maybe they are all from the same plane of existence and we just still don't understand it yet.
No, I think you're right. And I think you're looking at it the right way. Okay. So correct me if I'm wrong, but it looks like you're trying to find a bigger picture explanation.
Hmm.
You're not getting caught up in the details, which I think is very. I think that's what we should do. I don't think we should get caught up on the details of the paranormal encounters themselves. And here's why. Okay, so um, we do the things we see and we hear. We should not get too caught up on that. And I'll tell you right now, it's because uh, I taught college for about 3 years. College freshman, a class called Foundations of Science, introductory science course. But one of the sections which I helped write, and I got it published in the textbook, so I co-authored the textbook. But one of the chapters, one of the lesson plans we did was all about our perception as humans and how incredibly fragile and manipulatable it is. It's so easy. So basically, what I'm saying is our eyes are, I'm sorry to say, but they are crap. You know, crap. They're not great eyes at all. They're easily deceived. Optical illusions. Our memory is so easy to manipulate. I would do an experiment in class where I would just be talking about this topic. And at the time, I had my girlfriend come in, and she would just come in, whisper something in my ear, and leave like it was no big deal. And then a few minutes later, I'd be like, okay, guys, someone just came in, right? We all saw her. Let's write down what she looked like. What color dress was she wearing? They would get it wrong, dude. That's just one experiment we did. So never trust your eyes. I sound like some kind of weird guy. Like, don't believe your lying eyes. But what I'm trying to say is that, look, man, our eyes and our hearing and our memory are so easily be tricked because it's good enough to survive. We could live, we can make money, we could eat hot dogs, get a girlfriend, have a family. We can do all that stuff. But you have to know that it's so weak. So we can't concentrate on all the little details of a paranormal encounter because our eyes are so bad. uh, we cannot depend on them. So it's better to look at the bigger picture, like what's going on, take a few steps back. That's something I learned in college as well, which it looks like you're onto that path, which is basically like always take a step back and then take another step back. All right. So if I'm studying this one tree in the forest, as an example, I'm studying this one tree in the forest, and I think it's the most coolest tree ever. Let me take a step back to understand it better. Now I'm not looking just at the tree; I'm looking at the forest around it. Right. And looking at the bigger picture is gonna help me understand that tree I started off with, and then I can take another step back. Okay, now I'm looking at the state or the county. Something bigger, and so forth and so forth. So, yeah.
I just feel like there's a lot of things out there that have similarities to them, especially when you listen to people that talk about the things that they've encountered. So usually people that have had a paranormal encounter, I've found out that they typically sometimes will have a UFO, like they've seen a UFO, or someone that said they've seen a Bigfoot. They've been in a house before that they claimed there was haunted or whatever. There's been more than one time that these people have usually had similar experiences. And I think a lot of people have experiences and we typically just write it off because we don't know how to interpret it. So we get those weird innuendos or something and we just kind of ignore it because, again, it's a coincidence or some strange circumstance or something like that. But we don't see it as a paranormal type event. It could just be a normal event. And we're calling it paranormal because this stuff is always around us. We just aren't open enough to it. And I think that a lot of people experience this stuff, but I think a lot of the things that they're experiencing are all related one way or the other.
Hmm. That all makes sense. Looking at my personal history, my paranormal uh, things I had. So I had, I think the earliest thing I had happen was I had like an invisible hand grab my wrist, which some guy commented on my YouTube channel. They also had an invisible hand grab their wrist. I thought that was a really interesting. What is it called? Not idiosyncrasy, but when things line up. I forget what it's called.
Synchronicity.
Synchronicity. Yeah. I was like, what? I was like, I've never heard of that. Like the fact that you saw my channel and you saw my episode on Poltergeist, and that you commented and you said a story about an invisible hand grabbed your wrist, and I had an invisible hand grab my wrist. What are the odds? So I had that invisible hand when I was 10, and then when I was like 19, I had a classic gray alien abduction. And then when I was in college, like in 2016, I saw just a small UFO, like an orb of light, with my research assistant at the time. And then a little bit later after that, I received a phone call. I was in a research station in the woods alone, and I received a phone call, which is very bizarre. Two things called me, and I don't know what they were. they sounded like goblins. They were not talking English. I don't think it was a human language. They were aliens or goblins or something. Anyway, if you look at all these things that happened to me, they were very different, in flavor, like you said. But I like the thing you said about the paranormal being all around us. There's this idea that like our modern life has got us distracted. We miss a lot of things because our head is in the phone, or we're
Hmm.
thinking about other things. We're not close to nature. If you go back a few hundred years, you lived in nature. Things were quieter. Your mind was quieter. So I do think there's a lot of truth to the idea that our culture has grown us to modern culture in big urban cities has conditioned us to not be so sensitive to the paranormal. And perhaps the paranormal is all around us. It never went away. It's just that we're not observing it, like you said.
If you look at how the Native Americans were tied into with the surrounding areas and they were very spiritual or whatever, like you said, hundreds of years ago, that was the normal. But for us and the settlers and everything else, back then they all thought that stuff was witchcraft. And then what do we do to the witches? We burn them or hung them or whatever. Anything that was not normal Christianity back in those days, we bastardized them to crucifixes or whatever we went through. I think that mindset is what's kind of got us away from that connection to the other side. I think that stuff has always been here. It's just we're too far removed from it at this point to accept it. Now it's just old folklore, mythological stuff, or we call it paranormal. But again, I think it's just stuff that's always been around us.
I had the exact same thought. Let me elaborate on how I approached that topic. So once again, I think you're right, and I've thought about it a lot. So I'm stuck on this idea of culture. Culture is very important to me, and I don't like how we're manipulated by culture. I don't like it at all. Um, so I was reading this. I was helping the student read a book I was teaching recently, and I'm not sure what the name of the book is. Like Fahrenheit 9/11. Is that what it's called?
Yeah, there's
Fahrenheit
one
something.
called that, and there's also like I think
What's it?
Fahrenheit 5 something another or 4 something.
Yeah. Unfortunately, this was the first time I read it, so I'll put it in the comments later or wherever you post it. Whatever. Anyway, there's this Fahrenheit book I was reading, and it got me thinking about in that book how the government manipulates culture and what we believe to a really big level. But of course, the author was trying to say it's already happening. So this is what I was thinking about culture. It's like so fascinating to me. I was like, look, culture is so manipulative, especially with the paranormal. It's like you walk around, you talk about UFOs, and everybody laughs and everybody giggles. And it's weird. Like, why are you doing that? Like, why are you laughing? Well, it's because culture, we've been conditioned to that. What if it went a different way? This is what I'm talking about. Culture is so like flexible. What if like when Roswell happened, it wasn't kept secret and everybody just knew, hey, we found a flying saucer. And then from that point on, it was just common knowledge we have flying saucers, and it was taught in school, and nobody laughed. That would drastically change the world. What world would we be in right now? Nobody would laugh about UFOs because we're like, oh yeah, there was that Roswell crash, and we got those alien bodies. Yeah, yeah, it's pretty interesting how that happened. And so, yeah, and so like you're saying, back in the old days, where different cultures maybe still do it, but like Native Americans, they were 100% open to the spiritual world. They didn't laugh at it; they took it seriously. And so, when you were born in that culture, or everybody around you, you also took it seriously, and you explored those ideas. And so, yeah, I do think we're heavily manipulated by the by culture. Because, like, if I ask my friend who's a doctor, and I talk to him all the times about UFOs, if I mention UFOs, he automatically is like, "No, that's BS," and kind of aggressive about it too. And I wonder, like, why are you like this? Like, what made you like this? I know you haven't done any deep dives into research yourself. You're a doctor, you understand research, but I know for a fact you haven't done any research on the subject you know, and you haven't looked at it deeply. You're like doing something very unscientific. You're just dismissing something without any evidence.
Hmm.
You're just assuming it, and why? It's because of culture. He's a victim of the culture we live in my opinion.
Even within the field that you're in, well, again, you don't come out and tell everyone who you are. I wonder if maybe that's part of the why he is the way he is too, because he's a doctor and doesn't want people to think that he thinks that way, because then people are going to think that he can't do his job correctly because he thinks of these wild things.
No, I mean that's part of it. That's part of it. I mean that's influencing him. But also, like I said, when I talk to him, we talk. He's one of my good friends, and he's a smart guy, so we could talk a lot. So sometimes we'll talk for like 8 hours straight. We don't do that all the time, like once every 2 weeks, but we'll talk for a very long time. And we never run out of topics. But I know when we're not talking to him, he's being open. He's not afraid of ridicule. Although now that you mentioned it, like, yeah, probably in his subconscious he is. I kind of see where you're coming from now. Yeah, I think perhaps that is influencing him. Well, I didn't even know it until you mentioned it, but now that I start thinking about it, yeah, I think you're onto something there.
I just think like if people have to be 100% honest, I'm kind of that way because of what I do in my normal job. Like I never told people that I do a podcast, like, cause they found out and it is what it is at this point. But I tried.
You had a cameo in Begonia, one of the best movies ever made. So you could tell them to shove it.
Yeah, I don't worry about that now. Like we had a meeting and they actually mentioned that too, that I was in that movie. And I was like, yeah, like I don't go out and brag or tell people about certain things. So I'm like, I just kind of go about my business because what I do is what I do.
I hear you.
But, because of the stuff that I'm in charge of and everything else, I don't need people thinking like I'm some crazy guy out there, conspiracy nut or whack job out here in charge of all the stuff that I do. Yeah. But that's the stigma we live in this type of world, because again, if you look into stuff like this, it's not socially acceptable for people to come out and talk about cryptids or aliens or ghosts. It's still got that stigma to it.
But the hypocrisy, the religious hypocrisy, before I go into this little rant, let me just say, I love all religions and I respect them. Whatever religion you are, whoever's listening to this, I respect your religion. And let me just get that out of the way. Okay, but religions are the biggest hypocrites because, so your boss can be a Christian and he's like, hey, I believe Jesus rose from the dead,
Mm-hmm.
And I believe. I'm not trying to make fun of anybody. I go to church all the time. I'm just trying to point out the fact that why is it okay to be religious and believe things that are equally as radical as what we believe, and you have no ridicule? I just think it's a bit hypocritical. That's all I'm saying.
That is what I've been saying for years, and I've been dealing with it this entire week because I released a trailer for my documentary, and I've had people saying how stuff is fake, that stuff's not real, and they're super religious people. They're like, I've been out there the whole time. I've never seen anything. Okay, well, you go to church every Sunday, but you've never seen God.
Right.
So what's the difference?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, so what's the difference? Like, just because you haven't seen anything happening out there doesn't mean it's not happening.
No, yeah. And it's particularly funny to me. Once again, I respect all religions, man. I think religions are an overall net good. I don't want to go into it too much, but it's interesting to me, especially with extraterrestrials, that most religions, a lot of the major religions like Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, any religion like the ones I mentioned, where they have in their story that Earth had a creator, Earth was made by an entity or a god, right? Like Christianity. By definition, that's an extraterrestrial worshiping religion. I'm just looking at the definition of what an extraterrestrial is. It says right here, you're not from Earth. Okay, your origin is not Earth. Okay, then I'm looking at Genesis, and I'm reading the first couple of lines of Genesis here. It says that God created the Earth. Okay, so I'm thinking, okay, God is not from Earth, right? He made the Earth, so how could he be from there? So it looks like he's an extraterrestrial. So it looks like these Christians are literally worshiping an extraterrestrial. Now, I'm just going to put it out there. I personally do not worship any extraterrestrials at the moment, but Christians do. They do worship extraterrestrials. How odd.
They're going to get a lot of people mad.
I know. I'm not trying. That's why I keep saying, Christianity is great. Am I wrong? Like,
I understand what you're saying.
I know you understand. I'm asking for the person who's upset. Like, I'm asking them, am I wrong? Am I being disrespectful? I'm sorry if I am, but I'm not trying to.
I've tried to point out stuff like this before too, and it gets controversial and people, I'm not trying to like dog on religion. Like I grew up in a Christian home and everything. My family are still Christians and my parents still go to church, but I personally don't because I find the religious type of people, no offense to anyone listening, but most of them are hypocritical and that rubs me the wrong way. So I choose not to go down the pathways that they do, because a lot of the things that they say or do and how they act is not exactly how they can be, because they're very judgmental. Some of them are, not every one of them, but a lot of them are very judgmental. And I was like, well, if you believe in your Bible, you're not supposed to be judging anybody.
And what's interesting about your complaint there, which I have as well, is that it's if you look closely, it's not a complaint against a religion. It's actually a complaint as to how the religion is being practiced,
Mm-hmm.
which is interesting as well. It's like because I mean, if you it literally like I look at the Christian fundamentals, they're pretty good. You know, they're really good. You know, like be nice to people,
Yeah.
help the poor, help the sick. Don't concentrate on the wealth. You know, just these are great things to do. You know what I mean? But it's just a practice the way they're being handled. You know, like there's even like practical advice. Like I used to work for this place that was really religious, and so we would read the Bible every morning before work. And I just read this one passage in the Bible, and it was like saying basically it was saying like, long story short, it was saying it's good to work with your hands. It's healthy to work with your hands. You should do it. You need to do it. And then I started thinking about it as a scientist, and I was like, that probably has some scientific evidence or a scientific basis. Because if you look at the human hand, it's one of the most complex things in the world. Look what we've been able to accomplish with our hands. You know, we literally built the world. We're literally the masters of matter. You know, the physical things that make the world, we're masters of it because of our hands. So it kind of makes sense to me psychologically that we have these incredibly complicated tools that are have the potential to create marvelous things. It makes sense to me that if you need to use them, you know, like physically grab a pot, plant a plant, you know, make something like a tortilla with your hands, build something, you know, make using them in a complicated way, it probably does help us psychologically. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
just saying the Bible probably has a lot of true things in there. It's just that the way it's being practiced by a lot of people is not great.
I think people cherry pick a lot of it too. They find things that they agree with, and there's other things in there that they continue to leave out of their daily lives too. And they only quote certain verses or scripture, and they use certain ones to hold things against other people. So there's just, like I said, there's so much hypocrisy when it comes to religion, not just Christianity, but religions across the board. So I just say I have my beliefs, and everyone else can have their beliefs as long as it makes them happy. I'm 100% cool with that. Just don't force it upon me, because I don't really want to be bothered.
Right. And look, I've thought about this religion problem. You know, apparently, you know, my mom was asking me, and I did a little bit of research a few years ago. It looks like church attendance is going down in America. You know, less people are going to church, and that made my mom sad because she's a Christian, more so than I am. And you know, I just thought I was like, look, maybe one of the reasons why we're having these problems with Christianity because you know, so the hypocrisy, people not going to church. Why are we having these problems? I was like, maybe because it hasn't evolved. Like the way we practice hasn't evolved. I'm not saying like, of course, the Bible stays the same, but I'm saying human society has changed so drastically within the last 5 years. It's changed so drastically, and I just feel like not just religion, but religion and also schools. I work in the school system right now, and schools are heavily outdated. So I think that a lot of these institutions that are fundamentally a good, like practicing a religion or going to a public school, they need to change. They need drastic changes to keep up with the way people are now. And if they don't, they're probably going to go extinct.
I think a lot of the stuff when it comes to why people aren't going is because the newer generations are just not interested. Like they don't have the mindset or the patience to sit down and listen to someone anymore, because the generations of younger kids, and I can attest this by having my own, they are very, very content. They have to see it for like very small seconds. That's why things like TikTok and everything else are so popular all of a sudden, because it gives you that like few seconds of new stuff. Like their brains are programmed to intake so much stuff at a faster pace. And if you sit still in a church and listen to someone talk, they're bored and they don't care.
No, yeah, absolutely.
I think,
Absolutely.
and that's even with our schooling today. I don't know from like the stuff you guys are doing, but I know I have kids in elementary and I have kids in high school. They all do stuff on tablets now. Back when I was in school, we didn't do stuff like that. Of course, we didn't have tablets back in those days, but everything is now digitized to where they do their work on a tablet. They do their work at home on a tablet. Everything is now like a screen in front of them. So their whole existence from kindergarten and beyond is looking at a screen and interacting with a screen. It's like they're being programmed now to, this is what society is. We have to look at everything at a screen.
Yeah, yeah. No, I'm doing some teaching on the side here, and it's third graders all the way to seniors currently, and that's exactly what it's like here. A lot of screens. You're missing the tactile that we used to have. We used to have paper and like workbooks, and they still have that. But like you said, they have the screen a lot more, and it's really negatively affected them. And what I've noticed in schools, well, at least the district where I'm at, and it's probably true in other districts, is like, okay, you're in school for 8 hours. I'm like, if I'm being generous, 2 of those hours are spent learning. It's a huge waste of time for learning. At least it's more like a babysitting place.
Mm-hmm.
Get a meal in them, and that's not cool. I mentioned that because I have two little nieces, and my sister wants me to do some homeschooling, and I was like, yeah, I think it's doable because, like I said, if they're going to public school, then in a week they're probably going to get 10 hours of actual education in 1 week. And I was like, I could just come over like twice a week and do like 6 hour sessions, and they'd be getting more education than they would be at a public school.
I was homeschooled up until 8th grade, and I've never felt like I really learned anything after I went to public school.
Okay.
I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I ranked really high in all my exams and everything because we had like an I-step test when I was in school. They call it something else now, but like I was in like one of the top percentiles for everything. And then when we did our other stuff, like even the ASVAB test we had to take, which was like the arm battery test I had to take, showing my age here because I don't even think they do that anymore. But I was in like the
So
top 2% of the nation for like nuclear physics. And I was like, well, I don't know anything about nuclear physics, but I kept getting letters from the Navy wanting me to come work on a nuclear submarine with them. And like, I was like, I don't want anything to do with any of that stuff.
holy moly. Wait, so how long were you homeschooled? Was there a switch then to public school? Is that
I switched and I was homeschooled until 8th grade. I went to public school in 8th grade. So for the first 7 years, I was taught myself basically.
okay? And you
So,
had a good experience.
and then, like I said, I went to public school and I didn't really learn anything new.
Okay.
Like I may have learned like some history stuff here that I didn't know, but like far as like anything far as writing or algebra, I couldn't really figure out algebra. It just, when it comes to letters and numbers, it's not me. But
I,
I'm great at basic math and geometry. I do that every day for work.
awesome.
But no, I
Just
don't
I want to take a little tangent because I want to tell a paranormal story. I don't think I've ever told it before, and I feel like this would be a good place to say it. It's short, but and I want to say it because you mentioned the nuclear sub thing, right? And that's what reminded me of this paranormal story. Okay.
mm-hmm.
All right. So there's a little tangent about a little paranormal story to share that has to do with nuclear subs because you mentioned nuclear subs. Okay. So I was helping my dad do some work at a hotel uh, in Texas. Okay. And his job is basically putting new like internet wires in all the rooms. So we had to go all the rooms and replace the wires. I was helping him during the pandemic. And this city was near a big military base, right? So we get to this one room. It's interesting, actually. We were like banging on the door, and the guy didn't answer. But we really had to get in there. Started banging on it hard, and the guy finally answered. He was asleep or something, and he was a little flustered, but like we calmed him down, and I ended up talking to him about the paranormal. So it was pretty obvious that he worked at the base. I was like, "Oh, you work at the military base." So I was like, "Hey, have you ever had a paranormal experience?" I do this all the time to everybody I meet. And he goes, "Yeah, actually, I've had a paranormal experience." And he told me, he said, basically, long story short, he worked on a military sub and he was in the sub. And there was a time when they were chasing large, super fast objects underwater, which we've heard that before.
Mm-hmm.
So he was like, yeah, the whole sub was chasing them. We didn't know what they were, but they were huge and they were moving at crazy speeds. And so they sound like USOs. So he said it was eerie and people didn't really want to talk about it. But they did it. And then another little interesting detail he told me, another synchronicity or just a weird connection. He randomly then told me that his mother told him, and it sounded like he didn't really know what to make with this information, but his mother told him that she regularly interacted with gray aliens. Isn't that kind of strange?
Regularly interacted with gray aliens.
Yeah. So his mother would tell him, like, yeah, gray aliens come to visit me, and I like talk to them, and I spend time with them, you know. And it sounded like he heard that, and he was just like, I don't even know what to think about that. And
Right.
I don't know. I don't know if he had a close connection with his mom. He never followed up on it, but he told me that. I was like, it's odd that you had this USO experience and your mother's. I mean, I believe his mom. I have no evidence, but I like to believe that his mom actually did talk to gray aliens. Would it be the craziest thing I've ever heard?
There was a story, and I'm trying to remember where it was probably another podcast, and I honestly don't remember if it was a real podcast or if it was like someone telling a story that they were happening, but it was about a submarine, and they were chasing
Mm.
these marks on their radar, and whatever this thing was, they thought it was like the cliffside of like the ocean floor, like but it was moving. It was almost
Right.
like the size of the ocean floor. They thought it was like a rocky cliff, but whatever this thing was pinging off the radar was moving. And I don't know if there was anything else about it, but whatever they were chasing obviously was huge. So I don't know if they ever had a visual of it. I don't remember them ever saying there was a confirmation of what it was. I just remember that there's something on their radar, and they don't know if the radar itself was malfunctioning, but whatever was pinging on there was a huge blip on their radar, and they were trying to chase it down, but whatever it was moving. I was like,
Wow,
that's
that's interesting.
that's pretty big if that's actually something in the water. If they think it's a cliff or a mountain under the water.
Sounds very similar to my story. You didn't mention it was that big. I think I don't know, but it was big.
Mhm.
That's interesting. It was either the same nuclear ship, which it's unlikely, or this has happened more than once.
I'm going to guess it's probably happens
be-
more than once.
might be pretty common. That's interesting.
The USO phenomena has become pretty popular here in the last 5 to 10 years. I've heard a lot more people talk about them, about encounters of things under the water. And there's a lot of people that believe a lot of the UFOs in the sky are actually coming from the water.
I want to share this fact. I like to share this fact just to get us thinking about the planets and USOs and UFOs. Okay, here's the truth. Okay, about planet Earth. Okay, as humans, we only live in the tiniest percentage of the planet. Okay, as a species, humans are super selective of where they live. We only live on the surface of the crust. What does that leave? Well, obviously the ocean, right? The ocean's like 80%, 90% of the whole planet. No humans live there, I mean, sure, there's a couple of bases out there, but it's incredibly large amount of environment for something to live. Humans do not live there, so something paranormal can live there. What else? The sky. Okay, the sky. I think there's this line called the Kármán line. I think it's about 60 miles from the ground up, and after that line, it becomes space. So that's the sky, quote unquote. So it's 60 miles all over the planet. People don't live there as well. And the sky is interesting to me because it's got everything you need for life. It's got energy. The sun is beaming down even hotter on it. It's got water. What are these clouds made of? It's got all these. It's got space. To me, the elements of life is you need water, you need energy, you need space. Space not so much, right? Because some things are microscopic, but so I do think there's probably a lot of organisms that live up there that we confuse for UFOs. Okay, but I'm not done yet. Okay, we also have, as I said, humans only live on the surface of the crust. We have the whole crust underground. It goes also very deep. So humans don't live there as well. So I just want people to think about this. Like, humans live on just a tiny, tiny percentage of the planet we call Earth. There's so much space, and of the surface of the crust, there's so many forests that people don't live in. So we don't really take up a lot of space on this planet. So of course there could be paranormal entities hiding out there of all shapes and sizes.
If you look at the main population of the United States, it's usually in these big metropolitan cities. So there's a huge chunk of millions of people just in the United States that live in a small little region of a city. And then scattered across the country, there's little clusters here and there, but there's nothing like you get like in these big major cities. which is where most of the states get their populations from. So if you look at like New York City, what is it, like 15 million people or
Right.
in just one city? LA is like 20 million or something. Like, again, we look at it as there's a lot of people in a small isolated area. Well, you have thousands of miles of land across the United States where there's just no one living. Very sparingly.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
And it-
I don't know. These kind of conversations kind of get left out when people talk about the paranormal, especially with skeptics. You don't really hear these type of facts, but to me, they're very damning facts to indicate that it could be paranormal entities.
you mentioned
Yeah.
the sky. There have been recent sightings, and I've heard other people talk about this, and I'm not 100% familiar with it, but they've talked about things in the sky, like organisms that live up there, and they've described them as like almost like jellyfish and manta ray like type creatures, but obviously they're not manta rays, but they're shaped that way. And I've been seeing reports on Facebook, which again, I don't know. I don't believe everything I see on the internet, and I tell people not to do that either. But people have been seeing these strange things, and supposedly there's these floating organisms that live up above the clouds. I was like, I wonder if there's some truth to that, because again, like you said, there's everything that they need for life forms to be up there.
Yeah. No, that's a really fascinating topic, and there's been other people that written books about it, and it's really fascinating. That's the type of paranormal research I would want to do. I thought a little bit about it. So here's a simple experiment I would do to begin to test this idea of sky jellyfish, manta rays, or just large undiscovered organisms in our sky. So what I thought about is I find a region. So I look at some reports and I try to figure out a region where they're sighted a lot. Maybe just one sighting, but if I could find a hotspot somewhere in the world that I have access to, that's where I would do my experiment. Okay, then I would get a weather balloon. You could buy a weather balloon, and you could hook up a little GoPro camera to it and a GPS unit. You could send it on up. A lot of people do this in the desert. So they shoot. It's really cool. It's like a hobby. You can go on YouTube. So they basically send a camera to space, and you get a little video of space. And then now that's pretty cool. You have a video of space, but you can do it scientifically as well. So I would find that region, send up the weather balloon with the GPS tracker, with the camera, but I would have one more thing, okay? So I would have the agar plate. In science, you see these little plates, little round plates, and people put like a dirty hand or something to try to grow bacteria on it. You've seen these before? It's basically a nutrient. Yeah. So I would have a bunch of them, and I would send them up as well, and they would be sealed, so nothing can make contact with them. When I got it to different heights, where I think these sky jellyfish might live, I would have a mechanism that exposes them to the environment. So basically, whatever's in the air would stick to it. Then it would close it up again, and I would get my samples, right? So I would know, I would have some data. I'd be like, okay, this little plate was at so and so feet, at this location, this one and this one higher, lower. Then I would all you do is you put it in a little a heater, a little special compartment to grow. And then that's what I would do. So I would be like, what's growing up there? Is there a huge rainforest of bacteria that grow there? Because what I'm trying to show is that you have to have like a food web or a food chain to sustain animals, So if there are large organisms up there, you have to have smaller organisms, smaller and smaller. Like if you have a whale, you have to have like krill, and if you have to have krill, you have to have the food of the krill, like plants, So there's producers, there's a whole chain. So basically, I would just be testing. I think what would happen, my hypothesis, my guess, is that I would be like, holy moly, I discovered a whole bunch of new species of bacteria and viruses and fungus up there. Oh my God, it's teeming with life up there. Why hasn't anybody done this? And then maybe there's some medicinal properties on some of these organisms, who knows? But check it out. That would mean that there probably is an ecosystem up there. That would be the first evidence. And then I would scale it up from there.
I'm surprised that someone hasn't already tried to do stuff like that. Or if they have, it's just not been reported.
Yeah, somebody must have, because I did a deep dive in it, and I think some research has been done on it, but it's not a major field of research right now, sky science. But it's odd to me. Why isn't it? Like I said, okay, going back to this biology thing, it's so fascinating to me that life does not waste a centimeter of space. So if you go to like the hot springs in Yellowstone, if you slip in one, you'll be boiled alive, which unfortunately has happened to some people. R.I.P. But if you go to these inhospitable areas, there's life there. There's like little water bears, little bacteria that have grown to live there. So what I'm trying to say is like, you know, life does not like to like just be like, nah, I'm not going to use that real estate. If you go to a highway in the desert, and get the black asphalt, and you rub a little Q-tip on it, throw it on that plate, there's probably something living there. The air that you're breathing in right now is full of life. Oh, sorry, I know you don't like to think about it, but my bad, I caught myself there. So I'm just saying that why hasn't anybody thought about this? Like I said, it's 60 miles up. It's got water, it's got space, it's got sun. The only thing I can think about is that it's kind of hard to get up there, but it's not that hard. Like I said, we have these balloons, but it is it's an odd question. Why haven't we been looking up there? Maybe because you don't see it, you don't think about it. Out of sight, out of mind. Maybe it's out of sight, out of mind.
I guess it's because, like you said, with it being 60 miles up, maybe they're worried about space, but they're not considering the space that is closer to Earth. They're talking about like the moon and out past the moon, and they're worried about Mars when they don't even know a fraction of what really goes on here on our own planet.
Yeah, it's like if you're at home chilling, and then you drive to Denny's to get your Grand Slam. But while you're driving there, you're not looking around. You don't care about the road to get there. But it turns out it's amazing. It's full of pancakes and waffles for free. I just made that up, but yeah, it's like we're just missing that whole sky to get to space.
Right.
It's interesting.
Well, we've been
But,
going on for a little over an hour, so we can probably get ready to wrap this one up. But before we do, is there anything else you would like to discuss?
Okay, interesting question. What do I think about a lot? Okay, yeah, let's end on this topic. Okay, new topic. I propose this idea. Let's discuss this thought. What if disclosure is waking up a sleeping giant? What are the negative consequences of disclosure for aliens, interdimensionals, whatever these things are? Which I love, by the way. If you're listening, you're great. I love you. But I'm saying, what if these things are acting a certain way because we don't all know they're here? What if it's like we're maintaining the status quo? It's actually pretty good the way it is right now. Sure, some of us get abducted, but we have freedom. I could go to Denny's right now if I want to. But what I'm saying is, what would happen if everybody in the world knew these things were real? Would they change their behavior, and could it be negative? What do you think?
Yes and no. I don't know. It depends on how they've interacted with us this whole time, because I've also thought about, and this kind of goes back to how they've been here the whole time. Think about the old stories in Europe and stuff where they used to have like the fairy tales. And I mean, like the fairy folk used to kidnap people.
Mm-hmm.
That's a very much similar to alien abductions that we talk about in modern times. Well, what if they've always been doing that stuff and they've only taken the forms of things that people relate to at the current time frame? So back then they related it to like fae folk. Nowadays we relate them to aliens. Maybe they've always been here anyways, and if we are 100% confirming that they've been here and are here, are they going to do more abducting, or is it still the same thing? Like, why are they taking people in the first place? So I don't know if it's really going to upset the status quo, but at the same time, people may actually start to understand a little bit more of it, so it may change their view of how that we see them. That makes any sort of sense. Like if we know what they actually are, because maybe they're projecting themselves to be extraterrestrials to us. Back then they projected themselves to be like little fairies. So maybe they just adapt what we think they are. We only see them as what they want us to see them as, based off the time frame of when we're actually encountering them. If that makes any sort of sense, I guess. Like the way we've evolved to understand science and understand life, they've been evolving along with us as to the representation of what they project themselves to be.
Awesome. Thank you for that. You gave me a lot to feed off of. So I got 3 main points I want to make based on that. Number one, really got me thinking, back when fairy tales were, common, like you said, in those parts of the world, was there fairy disclosure at that time? Is it the fact that there was disclosure? Like everybody just accepted it. I know there were books written about it. Everybody talked about it. I don't think anybody was getting made fun of it. So my first thing I'm thinking is like, maybe there was a time when there was fairy disclosure, which let's say fairies are the same thing as aliens. So there was disclosure. I wonder. I want to look into that. Like, was there fairy disclosure? And the second thing I want to bring up, if there was fairy disclosure then, was it more common? Like, I want to know statistically, was more, maybe they were different, because there was fairy disclosure, everybody knew there was something out there.
Hmm.
They thought of them as, maybe there was a lot more abductions. I want to know, how common was it? Was it more common than it is now? Because that would inform what would happen in modern times. So now you got me thinking, like, maybe there was a time when disclosure did happen. We just moved away from it, but perhaps it's already happened. Now the last thing I want to think about is, okay, what if this time we do disclosure? Let's say there's been disclosure already in the fairy times. Let's say we did do disclosure again in modern times, but I think I'm answering my own question as I'm thinking about it. Okay, what I was going to say, what if this time we do it different because we get a layer deeper? So nowadays we're not going to be tricked by their little mirage or their glamour. So we're not going to say, "Hey, aliens are real. They look like grays." No, we're going to understand that is what they present themselves to be. They've always presented themselves to be. What if we now believe a higher truth? We're like, we don't know what they look like. We just know they're real. But to answer my question, I thought about, what if that's just another form of deception? What if that's their mask? Their mask is that they pretend to be other things.
Hmm.
I'm getting kind of meta right now, but anyway, those are my thoughts. What do you think?
That's kind of what I was getting at too. Is like I think we still won't really know what they are. They're only projecting themselves as what we can accept them to be. So right now they're projecting themselves as extraterrestrials from space, and they're these little gray aliens or whatever other people have encountered. But hundreds of years ago in Europe, they were projected as these little humanoid looking. There was like stories of elves, and obviously you had stories of leprechauns, and like basically like the whole little people vibes. Well, now you also have little gray aliens. Again, they're still not very big. Like, obviously, there's stories of taller ones, but for the most part, they're like little gray humanoids.
No, you're right.
So, again, I just think maybe they're one and the same.
Exactly. And also, I'm thinking about why even do disclosure? That's the other thing I'm thinking about now. I'm thinking, like, okay, what if we do disclosure, whatever, but what we're really doing is we're doing this. We're saying, hey, we live with other things on the planet that we don't understand. But this is a new thing we say. Okay, that's just regular disclosure. We add on this, which is not a new way of thinking. It's an older way of thinking, and other cultures do it. But we add this on to our modern. We need to focus on cohabiting with them and maybe working together with them, not as antagonists, but maybe we leave them gifts and we just accept them. We share the planet. What if that's really one of the better steps to take in disclosure?
It's something to think about, but I don't know if a lot of people will feel the same way because I think if they do know what some of this stuff is, I thought it was strange when they started bringing up interdimensional in the last like couple of years because that was more of a podcasty thing you'd hear people talk about, and then all of a sudden they started talking about it during the disclosure movements. They mentioned interdimensional, which was kind of a outlier for me. When I think it was Luna who mentioned it, the
Yep,
represent,
that is correct.
and I was like, well, that's an interesting verbiage to be using all of a sudden out of nowhere, and it just makes me wonder, like, what do they actually know, and what do they think that we should be able to understand? Because again, I think they use the whole religious aspect as a reason not to bring anything up because when they start to bring up interdimensionals or extraterrestrials or anything like that, it goes against a lot of different people's religious beliefs, and they think that we're not evolved enough to accept that there's other powers out there. Because I think a lot of the other things that they're afraid to admit to is we're not 100% in control. We're not always the top dog of like we've made ourselves out to be.
Yeah, I will say, Preston Dennett. I interviewed him. He's 100% against any kind of government disclosure. He's like, hell no. They've always lied to us. Don't believe anything they say.
Right.
Why would they say the truth? And I will say, I like the saying. The saying says, it's good for disclosure, but it's good for everyday life. Basically, people tell you what they want you to hear, not what you need to hear.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, the last thing. Let's see. The last thing I was going to say. You're talking about disclosure. I don't remember. What was the last thing you said? I just lost my train of thought.
I honestly,
Luna.
had brought up the interdimensional.
Yeah, and I said that it's not good. I don't know. Anyway, yeah, I don't know if you should trust them.
I've always, this wouldn't be Tinfoil Tales if you trusted the government.
Yeah.
So that's what I've always said is I don't believe mainstream media and I don't believe what the government tells me, because if I've learned anything by doing any sort of research over the years is 99% of the stuff that gets put out there is probably not going to be factually true. They're going to have a little bit of truth to it, but for the most part, they're not going to come out and tell you exactly anything that they don't want you to know.
I like to say this. I say this for my own peace of mind, especially with the way things go with paranormal influencers in the government. I'm not saying I'm that big, but yeah, let me just make a statement. I love my country. I love America, and I love every branch of the government. Now, if you're in a branch of the government and you hate another branch of the government, I also hate that branch. But yeah, I love my country, USA.
So I don't hate any country. I don't hate anybody or anything like that. I'm just saying I just don't trust them.
Right. Of course. It's good to put that out there. Yeah.
All right. Well, we can probably wrap this one up, but before we do, I would like for you to let everyone know where they can find your channel at and everything else.
Yeah. Thank you. Absolutely. So yeah, I put out a lot of shorts, and there's a lot of older videos that discuss everything I talked about. So I think if you just go to Google or you go to YouTube or you go to Facebook, just type in biologist, wild trees, it's 3 words, and you'll see my channel. You'll see my Facebook page, and yeah, just subscribe. That'd be great. Subscribe, comment on any video. I respond to all the comments. So any kind of comment question you have, go ahead, and I will respond to you eventually.
Just wait till you start getting people telling you you're wrong all the time.
No, that's good, dude. They that's good engagement. They're some of the most engaged viewers. I always say, hey, thank you for your feedback. Thank you for your you're boosting this in the algorithm. Thank you for that. And I'm just I kill them with kindness. But yeah, I know what you mean.
Well, it's been a pleasure talking with you. We'll have to do it again soon.
I sure appreciate it, man. Yeah, equally.
Yep. You have a good night.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
If you would like to be a guest on Tinfoil Tales, remember to send an email to tinfoiltalespodcast@gmail.com, or you can also go to tinfoiltales.com and go to the contact section. Just make sure to reach out and get a hold of me, and we will get something scheduled for a future episode. You can also find Tinfoil Tales on Facebook and Instagram. Just look for Tinfoil Tales Podcast. You can reach out to me that way too. Remember to share the show around. Word of mouth is the best way to help the show grow. And just remember, truth comes at cost. Are you willing to pay the price?